Unwanted invitation. Jay sat alone at the far end of the massive cafeteria, his small lunchbox resting in front of him filled with food from Earth that had been packed carefully. Before he left for Sunspire Academy, he was the only human in the academy, a place filled with beings from dozens of different species, all of them curious, all of them powerful, and most of them looking down on the human who had somehow earned a spot in their elite ranks. The scent of his food drifted through the air, a warm, spicy smell that made heads turn and noses wrinkle. Some students coughed, others laughed, and a few openly mocked him as they passed by his table. A tall, scaled student from the Draken race walked by with his nose crinkled, his voice loud enough for the whole cafeteria to hear. What is that foul aroma? Smells like something that died, and then died again. Jace ignored him, calmly picking up a fork and eating a piece of fried chicken. The Draken student and his group chuckled and moved on, whispering among themselves. Jace was used to it ever since his arrival at Sunspire. He had been treated like a joke, his strength underestimated, his intelligence questioned, and his culture constantly mocked. It was exhausting, but he refused to back down. He knew Earth had its strengths even if the galaxy didn't see them. Yet Professor Kelrax entered the cafeteria, his presence causing the usual ripple of silence. He was a towering insectoid creature with multifaceted eyes and long robes that shimmered with neural thread silk. He raised one clawed hand and tapped a spoon against the nearest table. Students turned their attention to him, and conversations faded to whispers. Today we announce something new, something bold, something that will encourage cultural unity at Sunspire Academy, he said, his voice calm and commanding. Cultural Cuisine Day. One day from now, each species will prepare a dish that represents their world, their people, their flavor. Every student will have a chance to taste and learn from each other. Jace felt his stomach drop as eyes turned toward him. Whispers rose again. Professor Kelrax continued, we have already selected the first representatives for each species based on their heritage and background from Earth. The representative will be Cadet Jace Rowan. Jace looked up slowly and met the professor's gaze. He didn't flinch, he didn't argue, he simply nodded and said, understood. Sir. A wave of laughter broke out from the Draken table. The insectoid clique whispered and buzzed among themselves. Even a group of silent armored Ashen chuckled with low metallic vibrations. Jace stood up, packed his lunchbox, and walked out of the cafeteria. The moment he left, he heard someone mimic a gagging sound behind him, but he didn't react. He had one day to make a dish that would represent all of humanity. Back in his dorm, Jace sat on his bed, staring at a small data pad. Recipes from home flashed on the screen, dishes from different cultures, sauces, spices, methods of cooking, boiling, frying, roasting, grilling, so many ways to share flavor, emotion, and history. He knew aliens didn't eat like humans. Their foods were often raw, fermented, or grown in protein tubes. They didn't understand fire, didn't understand seasoning, didn't understand the love poured into every plate on Earth. Jace grinned a slow, determined grin. He wasn't going to just cook, he was going to make them feel what humanity was made of. Made a list of ingredients, things he knew were locked away in the restricted supplies. But maybe, just maybe, he could get what he needed. The academy had a culinary lab, mostly unused by the students since food was generally automated there, but humans cooked with their hands, with instinct, with heart. He knew that kitchen would soon be the battlefield for something bigger than just a meal. Next morning, Jace woke early. He avoided the usual cafeteria breakfast and headed straight for the culinary lab. The AI assistant scanned his ID and asked purpose of visit. He replied, student participation in Cultural Cuisine Day, authorization confirmed. Inside the lab, he opened drawers, turned on burners, adjusted heat manually, and laid out spices he had smuggled from Earth with special permission: garlic powder, chili flakes, ginger, soy sauce, vinegar, paprika, and a bottle of oil that shimmered with flavor. He set a pan on the stove and felt the heat rise beneath his palm. It was time to remind this academy that humanity was not just muscle or mind, but also soul and passion. Outside in the hallway, two Draken students watched through the glass with disgusted faces. One of them sneered, he's going to poison us all with that stench, but neither of them could look away. Something about the sizzling sound, something about the way the human moved, like he knew exactly what he was doing, made them curious. Jace kept cooking, not for them, but for the pride of Earth, for the billions of people who made food not just to survive but to celebrate, to connect, to love. This wasn't just lunch, it was going to be a message, a bite-sized declaration that humans belonged here, that they had flavor in every sense of the word. And he wasn't going to let anyone forget. I've tasted a small piece from the pan, nodded once, and whispered under his breath, let's see them laugh tomorrow. The forbidden frigid culinary lab was quiet except for the gentle hum of machines and the soft crackle of oil heating in the pan. Jace moved quickly with steady hands, opening compartments, pulling out sealed containers, and checking each label carefully. He had memorized every regulation, and every banned ingredient, every loophole that allowed him to bring even a small taste of Earth. With him he had requested the diplomatic culinary allowance form before he ever left home, and now it was paying off as he pulled out ingredients. Most aliens would never touch a slab of marinated beef seasoned with Earth-grown herbs, a pouch of ghost pepper sauce carefully vacuum-sealed, a container of garlic aioli, and a small jar of Earth's finest honey. Jace placed everything in front of him like sacred relics. Each one carried a memory, a flavor, a piece of home. He knew the Academy allowed each species to bring items of cultural significance, but no one had expected humans to care this much about food. He turned the stove dial again. Flames roared to life, and the scent of onions hitting hot oil filled the air. The lab ventilation system tried its best to filter the smell, but it still leaked into the hallway. Alien students passing by stopped mid-step, their faces twisting in confusion. Some blinked rapidly, their sensitive eyes reacting to the spicy vapor. Others leaned closer, fascinated by the sounds of sizzling and the deep warm smell that seemed to grip the senses. Jace wasn't alone anymore. From the edge of the hallway, 3 Draken students to Ocean and 1 timid Frau stood watching through the glass wall. None of them dared enter, but none of them walked away either. The Draken with the green scales snorted and crossed his arms, saying, "If he burns down the school, I am not cleaning the mess." Jace ignored them. He placed chicken pieces into a large pan, letting them sear until golden. The scent doubled in strength, filling the lab, and then spreading slowly through the corridors of Sunspire. He added spices without measuring, just by instinct, layering garlic with chili, and then tossing in a spoonful of the ghost pepper sauce. A sharp hissing sound erupted from the pan, and steam rose like a warning. Frau student covered her mouth, eyes watering, as the spice hit her nose. The Ocean watched without blinking, their armored shells reflecting the red hue of the sauce. Even the Draken leader took one step back, as if unsure whether to stay or run. Yet no one left. Curiosity had them trapped inside the lab. Jace worked with full focus. He was not just cooking, he was preparing a statement. Every move he made was deliberate. Every pinch of spice, every flip of meat, every sauce combination was built on knowledge passed through generations. Earth food was not science, it was art. And he was the artist. After the meat came the rice. He toasted the grains in oil, added water, sealed the lid, and let it cook slowly, absorbing flavor and aroma. Next came the vegetables, which he stir-fried until they gleamed with color, and then tossed into the growing spread of dishes lined across the table. He even pulled out a small Earth-made dessert, cold, creamy, and sweet, a perfect balance to the fire that would come before it be. Now the scent had reached the second floor. Students were leaving study hall, sniffing the air and whispering about the strange smell. No one knew exactly what it was, but they all knew it was coming from the human. And his strange corner of the Academy just cleaned the edges of his plates, wiped his hands, and leaned back slightly to inspect his work. He had built a feast one expected and few could understand. It wasn't pretty by alien standards, no gelatin tubes or nutrient cubes, no sterile designs, but it had soul, it had heat, it had earth. Behind the glass wall, the Draken stepped forward, pressing a palm to the door sensor. It slid open with a soft hiss, and the spicy vapor hit him full in the face. He coughed, stumbled, then regained his posture, glaring at Jace with narrowed eyes. "What in the stars is this supposed to be?" Jace looked at him without emotion. "Earth food, human cuisine. You ever tried flavor before?" Earth Draken's eye twitched. He wanted to laugh, but the smell in the air confused him. It wasn't rotten. It wasn't chemical. It was something else, something primal. He looked down at one of the pans, chicken red and sizzling, vegetables glowing with oil, rice steaming gently. "I'm not eating that garbage," he said finally. Jace shrugged. "Didn't ask you." Told Draken grunted and left, but not before stealing one last glance at the food, as if part of him wanted to understand why it smelled so alive. As the door closed behind him, Jace returned to the counter. He wasn't done yet. He opened the cold storage and reached into the back where a small sealed compartment waited. This was the forbidden fridge, the place where only diplomatic species could store culturally sensitive items. He keyed in his code and pulled out a glass bottle, thick, dark, and filled with a rich sauce made from 12 Earth spices. It was his family's secret recipe, passed down through generations. Something no alien tongue had ever tasted. Set it on the table and looked around the lab, now filled with steam and light and warmth. He knew tomorrow would not just be a competition, it would be a reckoning, a revelation, and he was ready for all of them to take their first bit. The challenge begins. The Academy Plaza had never been so crowded. Students, teachers, visitors from neighboring sectors, and even a few ambassadors gathered around the massive open-air dining court where each table displayed dishes from a different world. Every species had sent their best cooks, and brightest minds to represent their culture through food. Crystalline dishes shimmered on the table of the Corellians. Glowing jelly orbs floated above the Hydraxian booth. The Drekan had brought meat strips roasted over plasma fire and decorated with black salt. From their homeworld, each plate looked precise, scientific, elegant, and calculated. Like art you were too scared to eat. In the far corner of the court stood the human booth, modest in decoration, made from earth-grown wood with hand-carved edges and small lights strung across the top. Jay stood behind it, arms crossed, eyes steady, wearing a dark apron that still carried spots of spice and oil. The table in front of him was covered with dishes steaming hot and colorful. The food didn't shimmer or glow, but it smelled like memory and home and celebration. It was chaos compared to the alien booth's bowls of rice and meat stacked beside plates of spicy noodles, containers of sauce set between crunchy golden bread, and a tall glass jug of cold fruit drink. Beside them was a tray of desserts, soft, sweet, and shaped like little stars. A loud chime rang through the air, signaling the start of the event. Professor Kelrax stepped forward, his voice booming over the crowd. Students of Sunspire, today we gather to celebrate the cultures of our galaxy, not through politics or war, but through taste and tradition. May every bite be a lesson. May every flavor bring understanding. The crowd applauded and moved forward in waves. Curious and cautious, most avoided the human booth. At first, whispers passed around like wind. Is that smoke coming off the food? What are those red flakes? Why is it sizzling? The Drekan booth was the first to gather attention. Their leader Korval stood tall, slicing thin strips of roasted meat and handing them out proudly. Drekan food is rich with strength and balance. It sharpens the body and mind. One bite and you'll feel like a warrior again. Arby, a Hydraxian elder, floated beside his table, encouraging guests to try glowing orbs of fermented dream fruit, a delicacy that produced mild hallucinations and soothing warmth across the nervous system. Even Professor Kelrax took one and nodded approving. Libet, the human booth, remained quiet until a small student from the Frau species approached. Eyes wide and curious, she hovered near the table, sniffing the air and staring at the chicken coated in deep red sauce. Jace gave a small nod. Go ahead, try one. She picked up a piece with trembling fingers, took a small bite, and immediately froze. Her face twisted, first in confusion, then in surprise. Then she burst into tears, her hands flapping rapidly as she backed away. But instead of panic, she smiled through the tears. This is pain, this is flavor. How can this exist? A few Drekan students burst into laughter, but others watched with interest. The scent was stronger, up close, sharp and savory, and something else they couldn't place. Not just taste, but feeling, like fire and warmth mixed with memory. Korval smirked and stepped forward. Give me one, he said, reaching for the spicy meat. Jace handed him a piece. Silently, Korval bit down, and for a moment nothing changed. Then his eyes widened, his nostrils flared, and sweat beaded along his scaled forehead. He coughed once, twice, then laughed, a low, deep sound that echoed through the court. This is insane. What did you put in this? Jace answered calmly. Ghost pepper, garlic, soy glaze with vinegar, and chili flakes, and some family secrets. Korval wiped his face with his sleeve, breathing heavy and grinning wildly. This is dangerous. I love it. Word spread quickly, and soon a line formed in front of the human booth. Students from every species wanting to try the strange fiery food. Some cried, some screamed, some danced in place. Others begged for water, but every single one came back for more. Academy AI floating overhead scanned the human booth and announced in a confused tone, flavor profiles incompatible with standard analysis, nutritional values unclear, neural stimulation levels unusually high, conclusion unknown. Effect. Professor Kelrax approached the table, slowly studying the dishes with intense curiosity. He picked up a small spoon of the creamy dessert and tasted it. His eyes blinked slowly and then widened. This sweetness, it's like Emoshinje smiled. That's the idea, Serbi. Midday, the human booth was the most crowded part of the court. The other booths still held visitors, but none had lines stretching around the plaza. Alien students begged for recipes, took notes with glowing pens, and asked strange questions. How do you survive this spice? Do your organs not melt? How do you make food taste like? Historius answered what he could, laughing at the chaos he had created, but also standing proud. This was more than a meal, it was a message. And as the sun began to set over the shimmering towers of Sunspire Academy, one thing became clear. The galaxy had just taken its first real bite of Earth. First biteth crowd around the human booth had grown so large that security drones were now hovering nearby, struggling to maintain order as more and more students pushed closer just to get a whiff of the food. The air around the plaza was thick with spices, steam, and a strange buzz of energy that no one could explain. The alien students were no longer just curious. They were fascinated, addicted, and desperate to understand how something so simple looking could ignite such chaos inside their senses. Jay stood behind his table, serving each portion with precision. He made sure no plate went out cold, no bite was missing its sauce, and no face walked away without being challenged by flavor. Each time he handed a dish to someone new, he watched their eyes waiting for that moment, that flash of realization when the taste hit their tongue and everything changed. A tall silver-skinned Zarn approached the table, hands trembling slightly. As she held a small metal dish, she looked down at the rice and chicken as if it were a living thing. Then she raised the fork and took a bite. Her reaction was instant. Her pupils widened, her arms stiffened, her whole frame quivered, and then she let out a small laugh. A strange musical sound followed by tears running down her cheeks. She wiped her face and muttered softly, "What is this magic? This is not just heat, this is memory." More came behind her. The Ashen, a race of armored aquatic beings who rarely spoke, lined up without a word. They tried the grilled skewers and the sweet sour noodles, and though their expressions were hard to read, their posture changed. They leaned forward. They nodded. They returned for second helpings, even though their cold biology had never encountered spice like this before. Draken students returned again and again, each time challenging each other to take larger bites of the ghost pepper chicken, their bodies shaking with the intensity, yet none of them walked away. The pain was addicting. It was glorious. It was something that made them feel alive in a way their protein bricks never had known. By one, every species in the academy tasted something from Earth, and none of them were prepared for what they felt. Flavor for them had always been scientific. Functional taste was just a method of delivery, energy in a digestible form. But this food was different. It had layers: heat followed by sweetness, then bitterness, then something smoky and warm like sunlight in the morning or the comfort of home. It made their hearts beat faster, their minds slow down, their memories stir. It was like tasting stories, tasting emotions, tasting life itself. Jace moved calmly through it all, watching as even the most arrogant students returned humbled, their egos melted by nothing more than sauce and fire. A group of Yalari twins collapsed on the grass, laughing and crying at the same time as they spooned rice into their mouths. Between gasps, an instructor from the logistics division walked up with a grim face, demanding to know what was in the food that caused such extreme reactions. Jace offered him a mild piece, something without heat, just rich in garlic and herbs. The instructor chewed once, twice, then stared blankly ahead for several seconds before turning and walking away in complete silence. The head of the science faculty, a pale-eyed scholar named Tharn, approached holding a sensory analyzer. He scanned a dish, then frowned. "My device cannot categorize half of these readings. These levels of pleasure stimulation and heat tolerance exceed known thresholds. How can one species build cuisine this complex without collapsing into madness?" Chase simply said, "We do it because we care. Food is not fuel. Food is love. Food is war. Food is art. It is everything we are and everything we share." By late afternoon, the Academy Plaza had become a celebration. Students sang, danced, shared reactions, and traded bites of their favorites, though none matched the frenzy caused by the human table. Even the chefs from other cultures began trying Jace's food, stealing small bites and whispering to each other in disbelief. Then the Draken leader Corval stood atop his own table, raised a dish of Jace's fire rice, and shouted across the crowd, "I declare this the food of champions. No war training, no combat trial, no battle simulator has tested me like this. As this is not just a meal, this is a fight. An Icer and Dareth." A crowd roared with laughter and cheers, and many lifted their own dishes in the air, joining in the celebration for the first time. At Sunspire Academy, there was no division by species, no hierarchy of planets or ranks. There was only unity forged by the heat of spice and the heart behind every Bidian. Standing in the center of it all was one human, a cook, a student, an ambassador, who never needed a weapon to change minds, only a plate of food and the courage to share it. Flavors of Earth. The Academy dining hall had transformed into something unrecognizable from its usual sterile and orderly appearance. Tables were cluttered with dishes shared between students of different species, and laughter echoed through the corridors like a fresh wind sweeping away old tensions. Jace found himself surrounded by a growing crowd eager to learn more about the flavors he had brought from Earth. Some asked about the ingredients, others about the cooking techniques, and a few even wanted to know why humans cared so much about food. Explained patiently the history behind the spices, how chili peppers had traveled across continents, how garlic was used not only to flavor, but also to heal, how the art of grilling came from ancient traditions of bringing fire to the table. Every story he told added a new layer to the food and to the understanding of humanity that was blossoming in the minds of the alien student. Salia, a slender frail girl with translucent skin and wide curious eyes, raised her hand. She wanted to know why Humans made food so spicy when it caused pain. Jay smiled and answered, pain is part of pleasure. Sometimes the heat wakes us up, it reminds us we are alive. It is a challenge, a dance between danger and delight. The fire tests our limits, and when we overcome it, we feel stronger, more connected to ourselves and to those we share it with. A group of Asian who usually preferred bland and cold protein cubes tried the sauces hesitantly at first, but then with growing enthusiasm some of them even tried to imitate Jace's hand movements, trying to recreate the stir-frying technique on their own small portable burners. The lab instructors watched with surprise as the alien students experimented, eagerly showing a side of them that was rarely seen outside of combat training. The Draken students continued to show their love for the spicy dishes. Corval himself had taken to learning some human phrases to better express his admiration for the flavors, especially the words burning and delicious, which he often shouted with wild enthusiasm. His fierce demeanor softened in moments when he talked about the food as if it were a precious weapon or a lost treasure. Even the Academy AI assistant became part of the discussion, its sensors recalibrating to better understand the complex chemical reactions in human food. It shared data on taste, compounds, and spice tolerance, prompting students and teachers alike to debate the scientific marvels behind something so simple yet so powerful as a meal. Jace took the chance to introduce the concept of cooking with fire, which was alien to most species on the station. Many used nutrient synthesizers or raw growth cultures. Cooking was something old and dangerous, but also magical and creative. A few students asked to see a demonstration, and Jace gladly prepared a small portable burner, bringing fire to life and showing the art of seasoning and balance. The crowd watched in awe as smoke curled from the pan. Flames danced under the ingredients and the air filled with enticing smells. The act itself seemed almost ritualistic, like a performance, but also a lesson in patience and respect for the materials being transformed into something greater than the sum of its parts. Curious Hydraxian elder, who had initially dismissed human food, now approached quietly and asked Jace to teach her the recipe for the spicy noodles. She admitted that the sensation of heat had awakened something in her mind, a forgotten memory of her own ancestors who once used rare spices before they lost their connection to old ways. Jace realized that food was becoming a bridge between worlds, a way to share culture beyond words or customs. It was connecting hearts and minds in a way no diplomacy or science had achieved before. The simple act of sharing a meal had become a revolution in understanding. As evening approached, the human booth was no longer just a place for tasting, but a gathering spot for storytelling and laughter. Students swapped tales from their home planets while passing dishes around the circle. The spicy food was no longer a test, but a celebration, each bite a reminder that beneath the differences of skin and species lay a shared desire for connection and joy. Professor Kelrax returned to the table, this time without the usual formal tone. Instead, he sat beside Jace and spoke quietly, praising the human for opening eyes and breaking barriers. The cultural cuisine day was meant to be a challenge, but it had become a festival of friendship and discovery because of the courage to share something so personal. Looked out at the crowd, his heart swelling with pride and hope, knowing that the flavors of Earth had done more than feed hungry bodies. They had nourished spirits and forged bonds that would last long after the plates were cleared and the lights dimmed. The great stir news of the human food at Sunspire Academy spread quickly far beyond the student body and the academy gates. Curious diplomats, military officers, and renowned alien chefs traveled from distant planets just to taste what had become the most talked about phenomenon in the galaxy. Jace found himself at the center of attention, his quiet confidence replaced by a steady calm as he prepared dishes for this new and important audience. The diplomatic hall was filled with beings of every shape and size, representatives from trade councils and peacekeepers, many of whom had dismissed humans as primitive and weak, but now they stood in line, eager to experience what Earth had to offer. Jace arranged plates carefully, each dish a story of flavor, a piece of home that spoke louder than any language could. A towering Ocean admiral with polished armor approached first. He took a tentative bite of the spicy chicken, then nodded approvingly, his usual stern expression softening as he chewed slowly, savoring the heat and the balance of flavors. The admiral spoke in a low rumble. Your cuisine is unlike anything I have tasted before. It is fierce, yet delicate, a paradox much like your species. Next came a pair of Draken officers who challenged each other to try the ghost pepper sauce on their tongues. Their faces flushed red, but their eyes sparkled with excitement. The spicy fire ignited a new kind of respect in them for the human who could wield such flavors with skill and pride. Among the guests was an acclaimed chef from the Lumari species, known for their intricate An ethereal culinary arts. She watched silently as Jace worked. Moving with precision and passion, she approached him quietly after the tasting and whispered, "Your food has soul, it carries emotion and history, a rare gift in a galaxy that often treats food as fuel or medicine." Jace smiled humbly, knowing that this moment was bigger than just cooking. It was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of humanity's ability to connect through creativity and courage. However, not everyone welcomed this change with open arms. A group of rival students, jealous of the attention Jace received, conspired in the shadows, plotting to sabotage his next meal. They sought to introduce anti-human enzymes designed to neutralize spices and alter flavors, destroying the delicate balance that made Earth food special. On the day of the sabotage attempt, Jace arrived early to the culinary lab. Sensing something was off, the air felt heavier, and the usual vibrancy of spices was dampened. As he prepared the ingredients, he noticed subtle changes in the texture and smell, a bitter undertone that did not belong. Undeterred, Jace relied on instinct and experience. He adjusted his recipe, adding fresh spices, stronger seasonings, and a touch of sweetness to balance the bitterness. His hands moved faster, his mind sharper. He was not just cooking, he was fighting back with every sprinkle and stir. When the time came to serve the food, the crowd noticed immediately. The taste was different, but still vibrant. Some guessed something was wrong, but no one could deny the human dishes still carried a fire and warmth that no sabotage could extinguish. The rival students watched in frustration as their plan failed. Spectacularless's response to adversity only increased his respect and fame within the academy. He was not just a cook, he was a warrior in the kitchen, a defender of culture and creativity, proving that humans could adapt and overcome challenges, no matter the odds. That evening, as the academy settled, Jace reflected on the journey from loneliness to acceptance. The simple act of sharing food had transformed his place in the galaxy, and perhaps the galaxy itself. His family's secret recipes had become a symbol of hope and unity, inspiring beings from many worlds to embrace diversity and connection. Own taste changes everything. The Grand Hall of Sunspire Academy was decorated with banners from every known star system, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and curiosity. Today was the day the Academy headmaster would sample the human cuisine that had stirred such excitement and debate throughout the campus. Jace stood quietly behind his table, dishes ranged carefully in front of him, the aromas filling the room, weaving a tapestry of scents that told stories of Earth's lands, seas, and skies. Headmaster Virel, a tall, imposing figure with shimmering silver skin and piercing amber eyes, approached the table with slow, deliberate steps, his expression unreadable. Many students and faculty watched silently, wondering what the verdict would be. The headmaster's gaze settled on the steaming bowls of spicy noodles, the crispy chicken glazed with rich sauces, and the delicate star-shaped desserts, soft and sweet in appearance, yet powerful in flavor. Picked up a small spoon of the noodles, paused, and took a bite. The room seemed to hold its breath as the complex flavors hit his palate. The spice was immediate, but not overwhelming. The sweetness balanced perfectly, the warmth spreading slowly through his senses. His eyes closed briefly, and a soft sigh escaped his lips. For a moment, nothing was said. Then slowly the headmaster opened his eyes and looked around the room. He spoke quietly but firmly, "This food is more than sustenance. It is a reflection of a culture's soul, a language beyond words that speaks of history, struggle, and joy. Humans have shown us that through flavor we can understand each other more deeply than any treaty or lecture could. This is the true power of Cuisineth." Room erupted into applause and cheers as the headmaster nodded approvingly, turning to Jace and offering a rare smile. "You have done more than feed a hall of students today, Cadet Rowan. You have opened hearts and minds. I hereby offer you a teaching position at Sunspire Academy to share your knowledge and passion with future generations." Jace felt a swell of pride and humility as he accepted the honor, knowing that this moment marked a new chapter not only for himself, but for all humanity. The aliens around him now looked at humans not just as strange newcomers, but as creators of culture and tradition worthy of respect and admiration. In the weeks that followed, Jace began teaching classes on Earth cuisine techniques, history, and philosophy. Students from across the academy enrolled, eager to learn how to cook with fire, how to balance flavors, and how to tell stories through food. The culinary lab was filled with laughter and experimentations as species shared their own dishes and adapted human recipes to their taste. As diplomats and military leaders also sought private tastings, recognizing the strategic value of cultural exchange through cuisine. The academy became a beacon of unity where food was not a divider, but a binder, a bridge between species and worlds. And all it took was one human and a simple meal to change centuries of misunderstanding to ignite curiosity and friendship across the stars. As the sun set over the academy towers, Jace looked out over the bustling courtyard, feeling a deep sense of belonging and hope. He knew the journey was far from over, but with every dish served, every recipe shared, humanity was taking its rightful place among the stars, not through conquest or war, but through the universal language of flavor. A taste of unity. The academy had never seen a celebration quite like this one. The air was alive with the sense of spices and laughter. Students from every corner of the galaxy mingled, sharing plates, stories, and smiles. Barriers that once divided seemed to melt away like snow under the warmth of a new sun. Jay stood quietly watching the scene, his heart full, knowing that something much bigger than a meal had taken root here. It was not just food that brought them together, but the courage to share something deeply personal, the willingness to step beyond fear and mockery, and instead offer connection through flavor, through tradition, through love. The spicy dishes from Earth had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in a universe so vast and diverse, the simple act of breaking bread could unite worlds. Headmaster approached again, his eyes shining with pride and gratitude. This academy owes you more than words, Cadet Rowan. You have taught us that strength is not only found in power, but also in openness and creativity, that true leadership comes from humility and sharing. Jace nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the joy of possibility around him. Students were already planning new fusion dishes, combining their home recipes with Earth spices. New friendships were forming, and old prejudices were fading like shadows at dawn. The Academy's AI broadcast the event across the galaxy, sending waves of hope and curiosity to distant worlds, hungry for stories of unity and peace. It was a message that transcended species and languages, reminding all that beneath the stars every being shared a common hunger for belonging and understanding. As the night deepened, stars twinkled above the towers, casting gentle light over the faces filled with wonder and dreams. Jay smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning, that humanity's journey among the stars would be marked not by battles, but by meals shared, by hands joined, by hearts opened. And so with one taste, one bite, one brave act, the galaxy began to change, one plate at a time. A story of unity written not with words, but with flavor and breath. And